Welcome back to Ujimi Media, your source for weekly news and some of the most important stories from Africa and the diaspora. Let's get into it. We begin in Liberia, where a former vice president has been accused of being connected to a massive international drug network. In a shocking development, Liberia's vice president, Jewel Howard Taylor, has been charged with drug trafficking, money laundering, and other offenses as part of an investigation into a transnational drug ring. The allegations come just 1 month after Liberian authorities announced one of the largest drug seizures in the country's history. Officials seized roughly $317 million worth of cocaine, which was allegedly being transported to Europe. Howard Taylor served as Liberia's vice president under former President George Weah. She's also the former wife of Charles Taylor, another Liberian president who was also a rebel leader and convicted of war crimes. Now one of Liberia's most powerful political figures is facing serious criminal allegations. And that raises some pretty uncomfortable questions. Can a drug operation worth hundreds of millions of dollars really operate without the knowledge of people with money and connections? There's also the political question hanging over the case. Howard Taylor is now aligned with the opposition, so some wonder whether her political position has made her a convenient target for the current government. But regardless of the political circumstances, these are serious allegations. If someone who once held one of the highest positions in Liberia can be allegedly connected to international drug networks, it raises a much bigger question. How deeply are criminal networks connected to elites and leaders in the country? And we may not know this answer until this investigation goes much further. But we'll stay in Liberia because the country is facing another controversy, this time involving the United States. In August, Liberia agreed to accept up to 1,200 people deported from the U.S. The agreement comes as the Trump administration continues its aggressive crackdown on immigration. This week, Liberia received its first group of 20 deportees. The agreement allows the U.S. to send people from a variety of countries, including parts of Africa, North and South America, and the Caribbean, to Liberia. And this has raised some serious concerns among human rights activists. Immigration agreements like this can be difficult to understand from the outside, because much of the negotiation happens behind closed doors. But the consequences are very real. People can end up being sent to countries they've never lived in, and once they arrive, they may have very few options. Liberia is one of several African countries that have agreed to accept deportees from the U.S. Critics aren't just questioning the human rights implications, they're also asking what these agreements say about the relationship between African countries and the United States. Liberia in particular has a complicated history with America. The country was founded in the 1800s by formerly enslaved Black Americans, and its political and economic history with the U.S. has remained unequal and colonial ever since. So for some Liberians, this agreement raises an uncomfortable question. Why is Liberia accepting people deported from the U.S. when the country already has major challenges of its own? This issue is less about immigration and more about sovereignty, and whether African governments are negotiating with powerful countries as equal partners or accepting deals because they feel they have little choice. Finally, we return to Zambia, where the presidential election has officially come to an end. But the political battle isn't over. Current President Hakainde Hichilema was declared the winner on August 18th, receiving around 60% of the vote. But the opposition has rejected the result, accusing the government of creating an unfair electoral environment. Since the election, opposition figures have reportedly been arrested following violent confrontations, and the opposition now plans to challenge the results in court. Before the results were announced, a European Union election observation team said voting was largely peaceful, but also warned that the broader electoral process took place in an environment that limited fundamental freedoms. That distinction is very important. An election can be peaceful on election day, while still raising questions about what happened before and after voters went to the polls. Zambia has built a reputation as one of Africa's most stable democracies, because it has a long history of peaceful transfers of power. But that's exactly why this election is worth watching. Hichilema has won a clear majority, so he has a strong mandate to govern. But winning an election is only part of democracy. The government also has to show that opposition parties can operate freely, that political disagreements don't turn into repression, and that voters can trust the process that produced the result. For now, Zambia has a president who has won another term, but the opposition is taking the fight to court. The coming weeks will tell us whether this election strengthens Zambia's democratic reputation or exposes deeper problems within it. That's it for this week. Tune in next time as we continue bringing you stories from across Africa and the diaspora. If there's a topic you want us to cover, let us know in the comments. Our goal here continues to be simple. We want to make information about our communities available to everyone from the perspective of the people we report on. So So don't forget to like, subscribe, and support the channel. See you next week.